Douglas, would you come on camera, please? Because we're a little bit over your time, but that's okay.
Not worried about that. We'll have some fun. And by the way, Michelle, you were totally awesome. I met Sherry at several events, and she's so delightful and really a powerful person. Holy crap, hey?
Yeah, she's amazing. I get to hang out with her quite a bit, and she's just absolutely amazing.
That is so cool. Well, you did a great job today. I really enjoyed it. Super insightful. Got tons of notes right here.
Awesome.
I love it. Cool. So what do you want, Marianne? Do you want to introduce me, or you want me to just keep babbling?
I'm just going to tell everyone how wonderful Douglas Vermeeren is. He is not only an actor, he's a filmmaker. He has made several films and has some really spectacular, wonderful things coming up that we've recently discussed. Hopefully I'll get a chance to be involved in that. And with that, I give you the most amazing Douglas Vermeeren. Take it away.
Well, that's so kind of you. And again, Michelle, so excited to follow you. I'm still trying to process the wonderful things that you were talking about. So we'll just do our best here with this. But I guess to give you guys a little bit of a context, yes, I am an actor in film and TV, but I've also produced 5 of the top personal development documentaries that are out there. So if you guys know The Secret or any of those people from The Secret, they're all very, very, very close friends of mine. In fact, it's funny, I was speaking with John DeMartini yesterday. He's done 5 movies for me, and he's one of my best friends. And so he passes his hello and wishes he could be here with you, but unfortunately that just didn't work out. But I want to share with you something that might be a little bit interesting for you today. And if it is, of course, if you hear anything useful, you have my full permission to take notes, use it in your life, and pass it on to somebody else. So here's the deal. When I was about 19, I was burning through a heck of a lot of money without a lot of results in my life. I was making more money than I had intelligence to manage. And at about that time, I had a mentor take me aside and say, if you continue this path and pattern, you're going to be broke before you know it. And he introduced me to the idea of personal development. In fact, the first book he gave me was a book that most of you know called Think and Grow Rich. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the book Think and Grow Rich, you remember that Napoleon Hill was invited to go out and study more than 400 of the world's top achievers. I mean, he got to some of the biggest names in his day: Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, the Rockefellers, the Wrigleys, everybody else. Right? And in that book that he had put out, he itemized a lot of the principles of how they got to their success. What was it that they did? How was it that they thought? And how did they attract this idea of success like never before? Now, here's how this applies to you for just a minute here. Let's think about it. Why did you come on to a training like this? Well, it's because you were hoping to get something that you could use that would make your life better and more valuable, that you could maybe find something that would help you get to goals that you have or intentions that you set, or maybe it's to repair a relationship, or maybe it's to build more wealth, or maybe it's to find that missing key in your business. Now, I want to share with you, I may not have all the answers for you today, but if you listen carefully, maybe there's 1 or 2 things here that will help you. And so I want you to be really careful and take some notes and listen carefully. And I'm going to share with you that after I met with this gentleman, I decided I want to be like Napoleon Hill. And so I went out and I interviewed 400 of the world's top achievers, but not back in the early 1900s, but today. So I got to people like the co-founders of Federal Express, the former VP of marketing for KFC and American Airlines. I got to the people who founded TED Baker, UGG Boots, Reebok, the Avita Group, Christian Dior, Jordache Jeans, Gitano Sportswear, California Citrus, the people that were behind things like Southwest Airlines. I mean, the list goes on. So I got to 400 of these world's top achievers. And I learned some very interesting things. A couple of the things that I learned, I found, quite frankly, is that success is a lot closer than most of us imagine. And the biggest obstacle, you guessed it, it's ourselves. We get in the way of our own success. And so interestingly enough, I took some of these ideas, and of course, I've done a bunch of programs like other coaches and a bunch of other trainings like other speakers, and I use this information myself. I made a heck of a lot of money, and we'll talk about that in another conversation. But I want to talk about where all this really starts, okay, the beginning of it. And so I took this information and I developed a program called Personal Power Mastery. Now, I think it's important that I first of all explain why I chose those words. First of all, personal, because I believe that until you take success personally, nothing's going to change. The truth of the matter is there's some things in life that only you can do for yourself. For example, you can only, you can't send someone, for example, to go get a haircut on your behalf. Right? You can't send someone else to the dentist on your behalf. And if you're working out, you have to do your own push-ups. So there's certain things in life that you have to do. Now, the interesting thing that I also found as I was studying these top achievers is you've heard the saying that if it's meant to be, it's up to me. Well, I'm going to say that that's definitely true for the beginning, but we'll talk a little bit later about this idea around if it's meant to be, it's actually up to you and your friends and your network. So it starts with you, but it continues beyond you. This idea of having a team or mentors or support goes beyond you. In fact, if you look very carefully at any major accomplishment in the world, whether it's someone winning an Academy Award, climbing Mount Everest, winning an Olympic gold medal, or what have you, it's always done by a team. It's never done by an individual, right? So I want you to think about that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, perhaps if we have some time. And I'll also talk about a free handout that I'm going to give you guys that you can find information on that too. So first of all, personal. It must be personal. The second is that word power that I chose. Now, if you think about what the definition of power means, it means the ability to act, or maybe you're acted on, because sometimes there's outside powers. There's outside forces that sometimes can either interrupt or help. And most of the time we look at the stuff that interrupts us. We don't look at the stuff that's there to help us, the support that's there, the things that are already around us in the world that are already primed and ready to open doors for us. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. But the one thing I want to share about power is that there are 14 of them, 14 specific powers that you have and you've been given and you have access to that can change everything. Now, today, in our limited time, I'm going to try to talk briefly about 5 of them, but we'll see how far we get, okay? So the last word I love here is mastery, personal power mastery. The reality is mastery is a really elusive word, because I think when we look at it in real life here, we often do not understand. We think that mastery means perfection, and it's not the same. So I'm a martial artist, right? So I do mixed martial arts, I do competitive martial arts, and if in the audience, if you do martial arts or any other kind of talent or skill or sport at a high level, you'll resonate with this. There was a question once asked, how long does it take the average person to become a black belt? You know what the answer is? Average people don't become black belts, right? So if you're going to master something, it's going to take time, it's going to take effort, but most importantly, it's going to take change. You must always change in order to get something better. Let me say it a simple way. If you want to expand what you have, you must expand who you are. That's how it is. You cannot get to point B or a higher level of who you are, or a new destination, or whatever it is, fill in the blank, by being the same or staying in the same place. It just cannot happen. So I'm going to encourage you guys to think about those 3 things. Personal, you got to make it personal. But yes, you have power. You definitely have power, so you can make changes. And secondly, I want to talk about mastery. Now, if we're going through this idea of personal responsibility, it is the beginning of all success. The reality is until you decide to own what's going on currently in your life, you can't change it. If you own it, you can change it. And I think that that's a challenge for a lot of people, is that they're not ready to take things personally. It's a lot easier in life to blame others or blame a situation or a circumstance or whatever it could be. But the minute that you own it, you can change it. Now, I also want to talk about power, that when we discover that we have power, that's the beginning of the journey to our very best self. Because when we feel powerless, we don't do anything. We don't take any chances. We don't make any choices. We don't get out and change things. So that idea of power is really important. And then lastly, I just want you to understand that what mastery is by definition is progress. That's really what it is. It's progress. And by the way, it's interesting. There was a story that I heard once of Pablo Picasso, the famous artist from Malaga, Spain. And someone was asking him in an interview, what is it like to be such a master? This is incredible. And he said, if you saw how hard I worked, you would not call me a master at all. You would just say, I have perseverance. So I'm going to say that that is an important part of mastery also. So I want to talk about the first power, the most powerful thing that we have in the world. And I want to explain how I found it. You see, it was interesting. When I first began this journey, I did study a lot of the top achievers. And incredibly, I learned so much from them. But there was one phone call that I had that I learned even more. I was thinking to myself, if personal development is about change, meaning going from where we are to where we want to be, then who can I talk to that's really good at understanding change? And I thought for a while, and I came up with a very peculiar answer. The answer was, I want to talk to somebody who's in charge of training the people for the suicide hotlines. If you think about it, if someone calls into a suicide hotline, often they've already come to the end of the rope, so to speak. Some of them may have already taken pills. Some of them may have a weapon sitting next to them on the bed. Some might even have made the phone call with a noose on their neck, or any number of tragic and terrible things. So if someone has to turn someone around quickly and make an instant change, forget all the personal development gurus. This is the people who really have like life on the line to figure it out. So as I chatted with this lady who trained suicide hotline workers, I was asking her, what are some of the most important things that you say? And you know what she said to me? This is interesting. You might want to write this down. She says, we'll never tell them, don't kill yourself. And I was like, what? Like, that's the first thing I would do if I got somebody on the line that's going to hurt themselves. Don't kill yourself, please. Listen to me. And she says, we don't say that. The reality is those people already feel like, and this is the power I'm going to talk about, they feel like they've lost their choice, their power of choice. They feel like everything around them is telling them what to do and has taken away that freedom of choice. So if we tell them, don't kill yourself, we're just another voice that says what to do or don't do. She says, instead, what we do is we say, yes, we empathize. You could do that. You could kill yourself. It's true. But what would that look like? And let's give you another choice. If you decided to stay, what could that look like? And if you got help, what could that look like? And we start expanding their ability to see choice. If you were here, you know, when your child is older now and get to see them at their wedding, what would that look like? If you got a chance to go get help and started the business or did something different in the business and it was a success, this challenge that you're having now, what if that turned into a positive? And what would that look like? And the suicide hot worker lady said that choice, the minute that choice expands, so does our power. Power is directly connected to choice. The more choices we feel we have, the more empowered we are. And so I'm going to just say this right now, and I certainly hope there's no one listening here who is contemplating suicide or struggling with other things, but it is possible that you might be encountering some depression or frustration or things that maybe aren't working perfectly for you right now. I want you to take a piece of paper. And whether you do these things or not, it's irrelevant, but I want you to write down all the choices you can think of that you have right now. One of them might be to quit. Sure, that's easy. One of them might be to get help, and you can talk about what that means. One of them might be to, take a course from someone, maybe even someone like Michelle, or a training, or someone like Vivian. These are choices that you have. And by the way, I love this quote from Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein once said that a problem is never solved at the same level of thinking that was used to create it. But I will confess, I think Albert Einstein missed something. Problems don't always have to be solved by you. So the same level of thinking that was used to create it is only part of a solution. Another solution might be to delegate the problem, or to get help with the problem, or solve the problem as a team, right? So there's a lot of ways. Now, I want to share something else that's kind of interesting, because we often hear this idea of happiness is a fill in the blank, a choice, right? Happiness is a choice. I'm going to say that that's partially true, because I know lots of people who make choices based on immediate gratification, and it doesn't always lead to happiness. It might lead to fun, which is a different thing than happiness. But happiness, my definition of it, is really that happiness is more about not making a choice in the moment, but making a choice of the consequence. So here's something interesting to think about when we're talking about the power of choice. Are your choices leading you to something that's going to give you what you want in the end? Not right now. Like, the truth is, a lot of stuff that we do right now, if it's worth it, requires some effort, some work, some change. Sometimes change is hard. But if we really want something that's going to give us what we want, we need to make our choices based on the consequence. So I want you to think about that for a minute. Now, here's something also I think is important to think about. I love this idea of, you've heard the quote that, you're not as good as you think you are. Can I change that a little bit? The truth is you're not as good as you think you are. You're better. And I think this is also a choice too. How do you see yourself? How do you choose to see yourself? Are you choosing to look at the gray and the dark and the shadows and the things that have never worked out? Well, the truth of the matter is that's a very one-sided, biased opinion. And there's not a lot of truth to that. The reality is wherever there is darkness, there is also light. And if we choose to see the light, we will see more light. You've obviously heard that idea of what we choose to focus on magnifies. And as we choose to see good things, it grows. So I'm going to encourage you, just in this brief talk that we're having today about choice, that you choose to see what's going to empower you and what's going to take you closer to your dreams. And I can promise you that even though there are negative things going on, and I'm not saying close your eyes to those things entirely, but I'm going to say choose to not put them to the forefront, and you'll see some things that are different. Now, I want to talk about another power, because I want to try and get through a few here that I think are valuable. The second power, and by the way, these are not necessarily always in order. I'm just going to give them to you. If you want to learn more, I can show you there is a sequence. But I chose some that I thought would be valuable for us today to talk about. The second power is called the power of courage. Now, it's interesting. I lived in China for a year, and I had a chance to visit some very, very incredible Chinese landmarks and areas there. One of my favorite places that I had a chance to visit was a place called Wu Taishan. Now, Wu Taishan is known as the birthplace of Buddhism. It means the four mountain peaks, or the five mountain peaks, rather. And these are like those mountains that you see in the James Bond movies that are like those long, fingery type mountains that seem to go up forever and ever through the clouds. And we climbed one at 5 a.m. and I could literally see the curvature of the earth, because remember, we're near the Himalayas, which are the tallest mountain peaks on the planet Earth. And as I looked, I could literally see forever. And at the top of that, there was a Buddhist temple that was built. And there was a gentleman that I got a chance to talk to. Now, my Chinese is not super strong. I speak a little bit. But there was a gentleman that I met there who was from San Francisco, and he could speak perfect English. So I was so delighted to meet with him. And as I had a chance to talk to him, we just talked about Buddhist philosophy and a little bit about different ideas that we had about personal development concepts. And as we were there talking, we talked a little bit about courage. And he told me a really nice story that I'd like to tell you now. And I think it's powerful. It's powerful. If courage is one of our most important choices, think on this. So he said there was a Buddhist priest who had 3 disciples. And he brought the 3 disciples to him, and he asked them a question. He said, "What is courage?" And the first disciple thought for a moment, and he said, it's when you protect and help the downtrodden and the weak. And the Buddhist priest nodded his head and said, "That's nice." Asked the second disciple, "What is your definition of courage?" And the second disciple said, "Well, it's when you stand for a belief or a principle or uphold your values, and you're willing to suffer for that." And the priest, of course, nodded his head and said, "That is nice." He asked the third disciple, "What is courage?" And this young man said, "It's when we are willing to save or rescue or even die for those that we love, those that we care about." And the Buddhist priest again nodded and then turned to walk away. Well, of course, these young men were like, "Well, who's correct? What is the definition of courage? You got to tell me. You can't leave me hanging. Come on. This isn't Obi-Wan Kenobi here. Teach us." And so the priest turned back and he said, "You are both correct, or all 3 correct." He said, "The definition of courage is love, because we would not fight for something, a downtrodden or a weak person, unless we love their cause or we love those people. We would not fight for a belief or a principle unless we love it and we feel that it's ours. And we wouldn't try to save or help a loved one unless we really did genuinely care." Now, I think this is an interesting thing. If we look at choice, and we also look at the challenges that we sometimes have in trying to get to our success, do we truly love what we're trying to achieve? Or are we just doing it for the work? I had a couple of years ago, I had a chance to meet with Edward James Olmos, the actor, for lunch, and we were chatting. And some of you might remember him from Blade Runner. He was also Commander Adama in the new Battlestar Galactica, and he's done tons and tons and tons of movies. And as I was sitting there, I said, "What's your definition of success?" And he said, "Some people think success is doing things that are hard." He says, "That's not success, because anybody can do hard stuff. Sometimes even a person, if you look at the Jews in the concentration camp, they were doing really hard stuff, right? Or, or if you were a slave, the list could go on of things that are hard, right?" But he said, Success is finding what you love and then doing it when it's hard. I love being an actor. I'm here in Burbank, California right now, and I've got a TV show that I'm on later on today. And sometimes it's really hard. In fact, I've got a big script that I have to learn and all this stuff. All these pink marks are things I have to learn. And these are pink marks from stuff I've already kind of learned and done. It's a really difficult job. It looks easy to walk the red carpet, but to tell you the truth, that's not what we do most of the time. Most of the time, it's porta potties and food trucks and memorizing scripts and wearing bad fitting costumes in very terrible weather, hot and cold. So do I love it? Of course I do. Do I love it enough to do the hard stuff? Absolutely. And so I want to ask you, what do you do? And what's your courage behind it? And, the truth of the matter is even if it's a moment that you don't love, the key is to attach that to the courage that's there. Courage is a willingness to step into fear to protect what you love. Not just fear, but sometimes hard work, right? I think it's important to look at that. Now, I know we're going to be coming up to time really quick here. No, she says no. Okay, so I've got two other ones that I want to share. She's saying, yay. So anyways,
keep going. We're okay.
Keep going. I want to be respectful to everybody. And I want to share with you
another 20 minutes at least. Go for it.
Okay, good. Okay, well, I will use every second of it.
Yes.
I want to share about two other laws that I think are absolutely, well, I'm going to try and get through three, but two for sure. So here's another one that you might want to think of that I think is really important when it comes to what we do and our law of choice and our law that we talked about of courage. Is the truth of the matter is now you've got some things on your radar, which you can start looking at the things in your life and saying, do I do this or do I do that? Right. And the truth of the matter is life is not always a clear choice between this is good and this is bad. I think more often the bad stuff we recognize really quick, we get it out of the way for most people. We don't think about that. The harder point or harder choice rather is, how do I choose between an idea that is good or one that's better or one that's the best? I think that's the trick, really, because there's a lot of great stuff. Like you can either go and if you've got kids, you can go and play with your kids, or you can do your work stuff for the day. Well, the truth of the matter is I'm going to say going and play with your kids is the better choice, right? But they're both good choices and they're both things that are important. So how do we start making these choices, right? And I want to share something that I think is kind of an interesting principle that I stumbled across, but it's not anything new. In fact, I'm going to try a screen share for a minute because I got a kind of a funny joke with this, and we'll just see if we can make it work.
Wait,
Okay.
I have to make.
She's just turning on. We got a second. That's cool. So just tell me when that's up, because I'm not so much looking at it anymore. Do you got me? There you got me. Okay, so let me just talk about this, and then I'll share you this little clip. So needless to say, this is something that I discovered called the law of probability. Now, some of you may have heard of a fellow by the name of Aristotle. Let's see if I've got this now. Hey, I do got
Try
it.
again. I just made you a co-host.
Cool. Let's see if this works. We'll try our best.
There you go.
Look at that.
Perfect.
Okay, now how do I get to? Okay, I'm just gonna go like this, everybody. Okay, so first of all, here's mediocrities. Good enough, right? Definitely not the guy you want to follow. But here's the one I want to talk about. And I'm just going to show this. This is Aristotle. And Aristotle says probability is what is most likely to happen. Now, when I was studying the top achievers about goal setting and achievement and all of these kinds of things, I found that this idea of write it down and set a date, that's pretty important. It works out pretty good. Even that SMART goal system, specific, measurable, achievable, all that kind of stuff, that's pretty good too. I will write this: clarity is essential on goals. You might want to write this quote down from me. It's that a goal that is specific and clear becomes attainable and near. A goal that is specific and clear becomes attainable and near. But I want to share you something that I learned from Aristotle. Now, Aristotle said this: probability is what is most likely to happen. So he invented something called the law of probability. And I want you to think about this. So if probability means something is most likely to happen, then this law of probability now becomes important to us. Let me share something that Aristotle also explained in regards to this law. So he said, if you were an archer, a person with a bow and arrow, and you were across a field 100 yards away, and you went to shoot an arrow at a target, right? Remember, something that is clear, okay? He says, how good would you do from 100 yards to get an arrow into the target? Well, the truth of the matter is if you're like me, you're probably going to miss it. It's not going to work. Okay, you're not going to get it in. But let me ask you this. If you took a step forward towards that target, what would happen? Well, your chances would increase, wouldn't they? And if you took another step forward, your chances would increase again. So every step forward that you could take towards the target would increase the likelihood that you are going to achieve it. Now, let's look at this next slide. I want to show you this next one, but I want to kind of talk about how can you already use what you already have, okay, to tell your message. And here's the deal. When it comes to increasing probability, the likelihood that you'll be able to put those arrows in, there's a few things that you have. Now, I'm just going to share this gently. I see some still giggling at that ad. I think it's pretty funny. There's 3 things I believe that you can use to increase the likelihood or your probability that things are going to happen. The first is the people that you surround yourself with. You've heard the saying that you become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you're hanging out with 4 losers, you get to become the 5th. But if you hang out with 4 winners, you get to carry on as a champion. So we want to find the people. And by the way, the thing that I find very, very interesting, if I look in my life, I've seen the pattern of 3 people, always 3 people. And by the way, I'm the one in the middle. So there's going to be somebody in life that I have to help and I have to lift to get to the top of the mountain. But there's also somebody above me that's going to be lifting me. And that's just the way karma works. And generally, you cannot find the one to lift you until you found one that you're also going to lift, right? So who can you learn from? So if your goal, let's just say, for example, is to make $1 million in 6 months. By the way, I did that once. I took $1, and you know that game that you do bigger and better, where you take a paper clip and you trade it for something, let's say a pencil, and then you get on. And I heard somebody do that once to get a car, right? So I want to try that with money. So I took $1 and I traded it for something else till I got something else, till I got something else. And in 180 days, I actually got to $1 million, which was pretty cool. By the way, if you want to learn how to do that, of course, send me a note and I'll send you some info on that too. No problem, no charge. But it was really based on the people around me. And it's so interesting that I kind of love, again, what Michelle was saying, that sales is not a numbers game. It's a people's game. It's a people game. It has tons to do with people. Everything that you ever want in life generally can come to you through a relationship, connecting with other people. And I think that's an important thing that we often forget. Now, the second one in here, you'll notice is place. I think there's certain geography you can go that will make your life easier and increase the probability you'll get to your goals. So, for example, me wanting to be involved in movies, it's a lot easier for me to do that right here in Burbank, California, than for me to do it, say, in the middle of Zimbabwe somewhere. There's not as many movie studios there, right? So where is it most likely you will also connect with those people and meet with those opportunities? Where do you need to go? And I guarantee if you look carefully at whatever your goals are, your plans are, there's places that are better. So for example, if you're single and you want to find a perfect relationship, sitting at home by yourself on your couch watching Netflix is probably not going to do it, right? There are places you can go, right? So whatever it is that you want, take a look at the place. Now, the last one, I'm going to call it performance. It's a bit of a tragedy sometimes when I'm watching American Idol or America's Got Talent. They show at the beginning before this kid gets in, he says, I'm going to be the next American Idol. I'm such a good performer. All my parents since the day I was born told me that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm the best singer ever, blah, 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 right? And then he starts singing and you see Simon Cowell go, oh, shiest. This is not, it's not working. And why? It's not because he doesn't have the desire. It's because they've never put in the effort to get the performance to where it needs to be. And I'm a firm believer that any skill in the world can be learned if another human being has done it, even if it's singing and you're not a good singer. Like I'm not the greatest singer, which is weird because like I'm a second cousin to Elvis Presley. So you'd think some of that would have run off on me, but it didn't. Well, I have fun in karaoke, but that's a whole other story. But what I'm saying is if I were to put in the effort and the talent to learn those things, the time that it takes, then yeah, I probably could get my performance to a higher level. The reality is again, back to this power of choice. If there's something that you want to do in life or something that you want to achieve or a goal that you have, you can learn how to become more proficient in that. And I think that that's important that we all try to do that, right? So back to this idea of the law of probability, that's how we get to our goals. You have influence over the people you'll meet, you have influence over the places you'll go, and you have influence over the things that you will learn. And just your being here on this training today tells me that you have a learner's heart. And that's something that's not always visible. In fact, it's interesting. We can look around the world and there's a lot of stubborn people that don't want to learn a thing about anything. And the thing that I thought was kind of funny is speaking about just money for a minute. In my money course, one of the research pieces that I found that was very interesting is, so I'm from Canada, but the same number is true for the IRS in the United States. They took a look at entrepreneurs and they said that all entrepreneurs, or 80%, 80 to 90% of them, they basically reach this ceiling where they can earn up to about $200,000 and then they stop. And then there's this big gap of no man's land. And then there's a whole pile of entrepreneurs that do $1 million and over. Well, what's the difference? I thought, these guys that only get to 200,000, and then this other group that gets $1 million and over, and sometimes incredibly over, right? Like we're talking in the billions with a B. What's the difference between somebody who's got a good idea at a great company, they're running it well, but they can only get to 200,000, and the ones that are into the billions? Well, do you know what the difference is? It's teachability. It's teachability. There's some people that are just not interested to learn. They feel like they have all the answers. Now, I'll just tell a funny little side story. When I first started learning about business and entrepreneurship, and that's one of my passions, I love it to death. I met this gentleman who was a friend of our family's, and he just had so much money, it was crazy. And I wanted him to invest in my company. And so I took this little business plan that I made and all this kind of stuff. And I met with him for lunch. And I'll never forget, he started flipping through my business plan. My goal was to get him to invest. Started flipping through my business plan. He goes, "Oh, you might want to change this." And I was like, no, can't change it. It's like, it's important to me. Got to have it, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay. Kept going. He forgave me on that one. He came to another idea and he's like, "You might want to change this." And I was like, "Oh, no. Can't change that either. Blah, 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 blah." Right. And I kept defending everything. Obviously, I was not teachable. And he stopped for a minute and he says, "You can be rich or you can be right. You can't be both." And then he pointed out a little bit about how much money he had earned. And he asked me how much I had in my bank. And he says, "Your bank account is actually the report card of how well you understand this information." And I realized that I had a lot to learn. Now, are you humble enough to take that kind of feedback? Thank goodness I was. And I began to then say, now when he said this, I would say, "Now, what would you suggest instead?" And I'm not saying you got to take every suggestion that everybody gives you. They may not know your business. They may not know your heart. They may not know your goals or your outcome. But it doesn't cost you anything to listen, just to hear what this person might have to say or the suggestions they have. And there was a lot of times when he shared things with me that, quite frankly, I found that it was a much better solution or idea than I had considered. So you might want to keep that in mind. Now, let's keep talking here. I got, I guess, only a few more minutes, but I want to share something, and this is the power of humor. I'm going to say this is one of the biggest powers we have. Most of us do not recognize it. Most of us are way too serious in life, and most of us just, I don't know, we just have a hard time smiling sometimes. But the thing to remember, one of my friends said this in life. He said, "You got to remember with life, what comes after a problem? No problem." And so that's the way life is. You're either problem or no problem. And so you might as well enjoy life with no problem. And you might as well get a smile on your face. People who have humor in their life, what I notice with the top achievers, they attract others around them. They're fun to be around. Have you ever had someone that when they come in the room just lights up? Well, why couldn't that be you? Right? Why couldn't that be you that brings this energy with you? Now, I warn you, I've got a really zany sense of humor, so let's get started. I'm going to share with you a couple of things I found on the internet that I think are funny. If I offend anybody, I've got one slide in there for you too. So here we go. "So what's your idea of a perfect date?" And he says, DDMM, yay, 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 yay. I find the other format's a bit confusing. I thought that was funny. Okay. How about this? "Did you know," I asked an old man, "even after 95 years, you still call your wife darling, honey, and love. What's the secret?" "Old man, I forgot her name years ago, and I'm afraid to ask her." I think that's funny, right? Isn't that good? How about this? "Find a man who strokes your hair and says how soft it is and doesn't even care that it's on your legs." Okay. How about this? "Just sold my homing pigeon on eBay for the 22nd time." Because he always comes home. Get it? How about this? "Went to the Air and Space Museum, but there was nothing there." Isn't that sad? Get it? Air and space. Wah, wah, wah. How about this? Spring is here. I'm so excited. I wet my plants. I thought that was funny too. How about this? Just letting everyone know that I'm going through a lot right now. Right? So anyways, I am silly. How about this? When you don't have a barbecue, follow me for more recipes. And if you didn't see that one, it's a smile, right? And here's the one for everybody who could get offended by this. If you find this offensive, I find it funny. That's why I'm happier than you. So if we can take off the screen share again, I think you might have locked me into that. Just take off the screen share. We'll go back to where we are, and we'll finish off with a couple of funny ideas here. Some things that you can use practically for yourself.
I think you can just, you're going to have to do it.
How do I do it?
I don't know.
Oh, like that.
There you go.
Okay, so we're back, and yay! I hope you guys had fun so far. I want to share what I think is probably the most powerful of the choices today. Okay, so I want you to listen up carefully. If this is something for, how should we say, if you're ready to take the next step in whatever you're doing, this is it. The last power is called the power of decision. The power of decision. The reality is when we did the movie How Thoughts Become Things, which, by the way, is now available on streaming services everywhere. If you were a fan of The Secret, it is Bob Proctor's last film that he did. We also have Dennis Waitley in it. It's the last film that Dennis did. And it's got John DeMartini, John Osroff, Joe Vitale, Bob Doyle, Marie Diamond, all the gang from The Secret. And they continued the conversation of how thoughts become things. And it's incredible. So you can find it on any streaming service now. By the way, before we get onto this idea of decision, I want to share something that was really profound to me. When we were shooting that movie, I had a chance to spend a lot of time with these speakers, and I've known them all for years. And one of my favorite experiences was spending the day with Bob Proctor. Now, Bob's been like a grandpa to me. We're both Canadian. We've known each other for a number of years. He's written the foreword on 5 of my books. So he must like me, or he really feels sorry for me, one or the other. Haven't decided what it is yet. But needless to say, so Bob and I were together, and we were spending the day there. And after we'd finished shooting his segments for this movie, we were just kind of chatting on the couch, sitting in his penthouse suite at the LAX Hilton. And we started talking about this idea about the vibrational frequencies. Remember, he talks about in The Secret that everything vibrates at a frequency. Remember that? And so I was really curious, and I had them all to myself. So I'm going to ask as many questions as I want, right? And so I said to him, Bob, what is it that's really vibrating? Like, what is it that makes things vibrate, right? What is that power in the universe that makes vibrations happen? And he says, it's love and gratitude. Love and gratitude are the things that cause the vibration in the universe. And then he proceeded to say that when something isn't moving well, including yourself, things aren't moving super great. He says it's because you just don't have enough love and gratitude in your life, right? But here's the good news is you can fix that. And that leads us to this idea of decision. Remember what I said at the beginning of this, that if you want to expand what you have to expand who you are. I thought this was interesting. When I did my first movie called The Opus, Jack Canfield pointed out something really interesting that I liked, and I've thought about it a lot ever since. He said, ever since the Big Bang, remember at the beginning of the universe, when everything came into being and all this kind of stuff, he says, ever since that Big Bang, everything in the universe has been expanding. Isn't that interesting to think about? Expansion, right? Again, if you want to expand what you have, you must expand who you are. So think about this. We make decisions in a very interesting way. Most of the time, we make decisions not on where we want to go, but where we are already. So, for example, if somebody comes up and says, I could help you with this, look at my program, and you'd say, well, I don't have enough money. You're making a decision based on where you are, not where you want to go, right? That program could seriously open a door for you. Or if someone comes up and invites you to do something, well, you might say, I don't know enough. Well, you're making a decision based on where you are, not where you want to go. Or I don't have enough connections, or I don't, fill in the blank. By the way, here's one of my quotes that I love to say: the size of your success depends on the size of your butt. Isn't that funny? But what do I mean by that? if you have a big butt, the bigger your butt, but I can't do it, but I can't do that, but I don't know this, and I don't have that, but I don't, but, the bigger your butt, the smaller your success will be, right? But most of us make our decisions based on where we are, not where we want to go. There's a Chinese proverb that I love that says, if you would know your past, look at your current situation. But if you would know your future, look at your current decisions, right? So if we think about our job is to expand, anytime we say but, we are actually working not just against ourselves, but the entire flow of the universe, because everything in the universe is heading this way. And if you want to swim upstream because your little mind is saying, you can't do it, you're not enough, you don't belong here, you don't have enough time, you don't have enough money, you don't have enough this, that, and this, you're fighting the entire universe because you're saying you're not enough. But the reality is everything in the entire universe is shouting that you are. And in fact, back to that idea, you're not as good as you think you are, you're better. The biggest problem that you have is you. And I'm not saying this to be mean, but I'm saying it's time for you to start believing the signs of the universe. God don't make no junk, and he has caused everything to expand. And I'm a firm believer that where there is a mission, there is also a method. There are things that are available to you that will allow you to expand. You just need to look for them. Now, I'll tell you a little secret about the law of attraction that I learned, again, having done 5 movies in that space with all of the biggest experts in the world on the law of attraction, the people who are known for it. You know what's interesting? Most people think that the law of attraction is you sit on a couch, you put yourself into a meditative state, and you say, when will that Ferrari show up? That's not how it works at all, okay? That's not how it works at all. Instead, the law of attraction isn't things being attracted to you as much as it is you being attracted to things, whatever it is that you want. And the idea of you being attracted to something versus it attracted to you means that you're the one that has to put in the effort. You're the one that has to put in the work. You're the one that has to take action. In fact, I love what Jack Canfield also said to me one time. Most people forget that the last letters on the word attraction are action. Isn't that interesting? Right? So you cannot attract things by sitting on the couch and saying, I wonder when it's going to show up. Sure, maybe something will, but wouldn't you like to increase your probability, like what we talked about today? Wouldn't you like to take control of your situation, of how close your proximity is to the things you really want? Well, the truth of the matter is yes, people, places, and also that performance will start to identify what you need to do. It will give you a checklist, but doing isn't where it starts. Write this down. We have to be before we can do, before we can have. Everything will start internally. Back to this idea of personal power mastery. A lifeguard can't save others till they know how to swim. So once you've got that skill figured out in yourself and that fire is inside you, that burning, beginning with you, right? It all begins with you. It will then expand into what you can do, and then it will expand out into what you can have. Now, I want to share again, if it's meant to be, it begins with me, but very quickly you need to get allies and support and people who can help you accomplish those dreams. Now, I'm going to give you an invite here. If you are interested to learn more about this, I'm happy to send you some free information. You don't have to take a program from me. You don't have to follow me on social media. Most of my social media is movie stuff anyways, not as much personal development, but you don't have to follow me. You don't have to, there's no obligation at all. But if you would like some more information on this, just put your email in the chat. I'll do a screenshot of it. And if you happen to be in one of the remote areas listening to it, send me a note at Douglas Vermeeren, probably through Instagram. There's not many Vermeerens out there. And for those of you that trip over spelling Vermeeren, don't worry, I did. Even when I was in grade 1, I didn't know where the E's went or how many there were and all that kind of stuff. I still have trouble. But I was going to suggest you can remember the guy who did Girl with the Pearl Earring, the painting Girl with the Pearl Earring. That's my great grandpa. So just Google girl with the pearl earring and you'll see Vermeer, and then you just add EN onto his name. But I'm all over. You can find me anywhere, but Instagram's probably a great place to reach out. And I see a couple people who've been kind enough to leave their info already. So I will send you some free stuff. Can I just actually finish with one quick thought for you? I think this is maybe the most important thought. And I want you to recognize it whether you're watching right now in this Zoom or you're in a remote place. I want you to put your hand on your heart. Okay. And I want you to feel that energy that's you inside. You're somebody special. You're unique. Now, I have a friend whose name is Sid, and Sid is a speaker. Sid had a chance to speak in this little old podunk town in Canada where there was literally a population of probably less than 40 people. Just a super tiny town, but they came to hear him speak. And after he finished, he and his wife had a chance to tour this little tiny town. And they went out into this town looking around, and there was only one store. So he sat on the bench out front when as his wife went into this, I think it was a sand store, SAAN. And they have next to nothing in there if you've ever seen one of these in a small town. So she went in and started poking around looking at this stuff while he was on the bench. And as he was sitting on the bench, this old timer sat down next to him. So to make conversation, Sid turned to the old timer and he's like, "So what's this town famous for?" And the old timer simply said, "Hell if I know, but you can go anywhere from here." That's the message that I want to give you guys. You are special. You are worthy. You are worth it. There's amazing things ahead for you. The future is on its way. And wherever you're at today, whether you're liking it or in challenge with it, even if you've got the most difficult things that are going on, your future has not been written yet. You can go anywhere from here. And that decision is yours. So my name's Doug Vermeeren. It's been really good being with you. I'm going to turn the time back over to Marianne. And I look forward to seeing some of you again in the future and learning more about what you guys are all going to share with us today. Thanks for having me.
So much. Thank you so much, Douglas. Amazing as always. I did a podcast with Douglas. He always does amazing, always. And he could talk forever and I could listen to you forever, although we do have some other people scheduled. So thank you again so much for that. That was outstanding as always and very heartwarming. Hi, Brian. Nice to meet you, sort of. Online. Excellent. So
by the way, you guys do want to connect with Brian. He runs a variety of really cool companies helping with success. And if you're a speaker and you're looking to get your words out there to people, he's a really good contact and he's got an incredible radio show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. That's amazing. So